And we are up and running, and it is another beautiful day for a discussion about A Course in Miracles. We're going to be moving in a new direction today. We finished off the chapter that we were working on, The Guiltless World, and now we're going to start looking at the Teacher's Manual. And there are some really very deep, profound insights. I think the Teacher's Manual almost is more appropriate to read than the text as you start your journey in A Course in Miracles, because it does have so many insights that it wants to share with us. So how are things in sunny California there, Stephen?
Pretty windy this morning, actually. I was just, when I woke up, it was like the trees were, it was surprising that they were not blowing out of the ground. It was so windy. And it's calmed down a bit since then, but sunny and windy today. So things are on the move as usual.
Well, that's not a bad thing. It's just, you know, with the wind, you also get the after effects, which is that fine patina all over everything in the house that you have to go around and dust and scrape and remove. So you'll be preoccupied for a couple of days.
Yeah, knowing us, we'll probably just leave it. So.
I can relate to that. It's like, it'll still be there when I get back, so why should I task myself now?
Yeah, it's maintaining this material existence, because it just, entropy, the breaking down of everything is just a constant reality in this world. So if you're trying to find perfect order in this world, then you may be out of luck.
Yes, that is massively depressing for those who are building their houses on the shifting sands of time. But we won't highlight that too much, because some people get frustrated whenever you start pointing that out to them. So anyway, with the Manual for Teachers, we've got the introduction here. I think I'll go ahead and start that off, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So the first paragraph in the introduction says, the role of teaching and learning is actually reversed in the thinking of the world. The reversal is characteristic. It seems as if the teacher and the learner are separated, the teacher giving something to the learner rather than to himself. Further, the act of teaching is regarded as a special activity in which one engages only a relatively small portion of one's time. The Course, on the other hand, emphasizes that to teach is to learn, so that teacher and learner are the same. It also emphasizes that teaching is a constant process. It goes on every moment of the day and continues into the sleeping thoughts as well. So it kind of starts off here with some really wildly different perspectives on role playing and teaching and learning. And you know, it was interesting, before I even got my hands on the first copy of the Course 20 years ago, over the period of probably 5 or 6 years before I was introduced to the Course, that thought that in order to learn, you have to teach. And in order to teach, you have to be aware of the fact that you are learning within that process. That had really become very clear in my mind. So when I picked up A Course in Miracles and did stumble across this part of the Course, it was complete validation for me. And I think this is a very important part of the journey with A Course in Miracles, is to trust yourself. When you are out there communicating with people, if somebody has a question about A Course in Miracles, or if somebody has a question about life in God or life in the material world, if you'll just relax, you will let the Holy Spirit take over, and then become observant, because if you listen to what you're saying, you're going to learn something.
Yeah, and this section really reminds me of that Richard Bach quote that you teach best what you most need to learn. And that has been a line that sticks with me too, that basically I always notice myself whenever I'm teaching or want to teach anything, it's because I really actually want to learn that better. I want to remind myself of it better. And whenever I teach, I'm doing so. And something that was actually coming to me this morning, which is really synchronistic with how you wanted to do the manual for teachers today, is the idea that we teach most through our example, and we teach most through that choice we make internally of which voice we're going to listen to, the voice of fear, voice of love. And it's just like with raising kids. I think that the example speaks much louder than the words that we speak.
That is very true. Young people really push us in so many ways to evolve and to advance and to become bigger and deeper and more sentient in, the details of our lives. And as they call upon us to share information with them, again, there has to be a certain amount of trust as we just get into that flow of sharing things with the youth that are around us. And when we're operating from the level of the mind, then you get stuck in that level of let's open up the Bible here and I'll teach you all about spare the rod and spoil the child. Or else we can trust that God is within us and is unfolding and in the moment. And then we can teach them about the depths of love that is all around them that they have access to.
Absolutely. So I'll go off with this next paragraph then. To teach is to demonstrate. There are only two thought systems, and you demonstrate that you believe one or the other is true all the time. From your demonstration, others learn, and so do you. The question is not whether you will teach, for in that there is no choice. The purpose of the course might be said to provide you with a means of choosing what you want to teach on the basis of what you want to learn. You cannot give to someone else, but only to yourself. And this you learn through teaching. Teaching is but a call to witnesses to attest to what you believe. It is a method of conversion. This is not done by words alone. Any situation must be to you a chance to teach others what they are, and what they are to you. No more than that, but also never less. So, something I always remember with a statement like that is that what you really are is love. So, I almost feel like words could just, words could never really describe what you are. And I could never fully, give you words that would fully honor that love. So I feel like just recognizing it is the teaching in itself.
That's very true. And being, again, self-aware as the divine self, as the Christ, rather than identifying with the ego in your interactions with people, gives you the opportunity to witness the Christ within them. So it's that reciprocity that goes on here. When we're learning and teaching, it's this mystical dance that's going on. And really, we're learning how to see ourselves in others. But that self is that essence of light, that essence of love, and the essence of God. So the more we approach our interactions with people from that level, the more we are going to perceive that within ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think that the course, since the course talks about, even all teachers of God we'll probably get to this line eventually, that all teachers of God are here because they're learning. We're all learning here. So, and if we were already perfect and had it all down, then we wouldn't have the need to be here and to be teaching. So that's just good to keep that in mind, as a sense of like humility and a sense of excitement for the journey.
Very true. Looking at the third paragraph here, it goes on to say the curriculum you set up is therefore determined exclusively by what you think you are and what you believe the relationship of others is to you. In the formal teaching situation, these questions may be totally unrelated to what you think you are teaching. Yet it is impossible not to use the content of any situation on behalf of what you really teach, and therefore really learn. To this, the verbal content of your teaching is quite irrelevant. It may coincide with it, or it may not. It is the teaching underlying what you say that teaches you. Teaching but reinforces what you believe about yourself. Its fundamental purpose is to diminish self-doubt. This does not mean that the self you are trying to protect is real, but it does mean that the self you think you think is real is what you teach. So we're getting into, an area here where things are getting a little bit edgy, in the sense that as we're stepping off into this next level of interacting with people and realizing the impact that it's going to have on those around us, it also causes us to ponder, how much do I want to let go of my doubts, my fears, my guilt, my sorrow, and my shame. So if you notice yourself giving people a prod in the direction of liberation and freedom, then that means that you're actually ready to accept that for yourself. And it ends up becoming a very mystical experience pretty much across the board for everybody.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful positive spin on it. And conversely, just to look at, if you're being critical of other people, and if you're, like trying to correct people all the time and finding problems and showing other people how things really should be done, then you're really doing all that to yourself. And that's just a whole lot of judgment that you're putting on yourself. And that's the Course talks about that. It's very heavy. So you can let all that go.
Very true. Yeah, and it's interesting how we get into those situations where we're watching other people and analyzing and thinking, oh, wow, look at that person. They're teaching, fear. They're teaching ugliness. And when we run into situations like that, we immediately need to pull back and really examine our own hidden agendas, because you will not see anything around you that is not a reflection of that which is within you. So again, anytime you're coming into a state of judgment about how the people around you are performing in context to what you think is right or wrong, that is a mirror, and you need to stop for a minute and just be still and ask yourself, what am I doing? Am I aware of the things that I am thinking and saying?
Yeah, a good short little reminder to carry with you is something called, if you spot it, you got it. As soon as you spot it, it means it's in you somewhere. So don't be too hard.
Yeah, it absolutely is. That's the way it works. So that's what makes it so much fun for us, is that we learn all these marvelous things about ourselves that would go completely unrealized. And so as we have these discussions about the Course, all of these things become so much more lucid for us.
Yeah. And the next paragraph is, this is inevitable, right?
Correct.
This is inevitable. There is no escape from it. How could it be otherwise? Everyone who follows the world's curriculum, and everyone here does follow it until he changes his mind, teaches solely to convince himself that he is what he is not. Herein is the purpose of the world. What else, then, would its curriculum be? Hopeless and closed learning situation, which teaches nothing but despair and death. God sends his teachers. And as they teach his lessons of joy and hope, their learning finally becomes complete.
And that kind of gives us a sense of, you know, the values of the world that surround us. And if you're out there on the front lines as a protester, saving the earth and saving the whales and saving the wolves and saving the indigenous people and all these different activities, you're trying to fix something that can't be fixed, because we've got, you know, thousands of years of history of fixing things, and yet everything is always pretty chaotic when you look in the world around us. So within this, this particular paragraph really brings us back into sharp focus that the only way to fix anything is for you to do your own work as far as the process of awakening, and to extend love to everyone around you. You don't have to be political, you don't have to be, you know, revolutionary, but you do have to be a source of love to the world that desperately needs it.
Yeah, I guess you could say then, in a sense, that's your own personal revolution, to extend and recognize everyone as love. Because I mean, I can't think of anything more revolutionary to the personal individual than that.
Yes, that's definitely not the way of the world. And as soon as you stop trying to fit into the way of the world, that's when you start experiencing the world from an entirely different level, and realize that there are all these people who are so wounded and who need so much compassion in the world. And you know, that's why we're here, is to be the light unto the world, and to bring illumination into these darkened corners that we have kept hidden in every culture throughout the millennium. So the final paragraph here, I'll finish it up, and it says, except for God's teachers, there would be little hope of salvation, for the world of sin would seem forever real. The self-deceiving must deceive, for they must teach deception. And what else is hell? This is a manual for the teachers of God. They are not perfect, or they would not be here. Yet it is their mission to become perfect here. And that's one of my favorite passages in the New Testament, is when Jesus does this little jab at the people around him. He says, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect also. So we have heard this, even in the text of the Bible, that we have this option. We can become perfect. And here it says, their mission to become perfect here. I think that's really profound and encouraging, because it means that we can do that. We can achieve that. And so they teach perfection over and over in many, many ways until they have learned it. And then they are seen no more, although their thoughts remain a source of strength and truth forever. Who are they? How are they chosen? What do they do? How can they work out their own salvation and the salvation of the world? This manual attempts to answer these questions. So the outcome of our working with this manual is that ultimately we're going to disappear, but we'll still be here as a part of this process of awakening to love. And it's again, something that gives us a sense of assurance, because the ego is constantly telling us, well, you're going to croak and you'll be forgotten and you'll cease to be. Or even better, you'll be in hellfire roasting away for, eternity. So the beauty of the Course is it gives us all these beautiful images about our function in the world and what the real nature of God's will for us actually is.
Yeah, something like is coming up about how the ego is. If you hold even a thought of like a future punishment, or you're holding on to past, wherever you're putting that in terms of timeline, like it's still in your mind in the present. So if that's in your mind in the present, then you're already suffering the consequences of it to some degree. And that's how the ego works. It tries to obscure it and put it in a different time zone, and you're experiencing the effects of it in the present then, so.
Yeah, it's the burden of this world. And, we don't have to take on other people's burdens. Our job is to help people recognize that they don't have a burden. There's no legitimate reason to carry the guilt or the fear, the shame, or the misery of experiences that they've had in the past or imagined that they've had in the past.
Yeah, and it's challenging, as it might seem, to let go of that ego and let the Holy Spirit shine through. I think that in a sense, the Holy Spirit kind of looks at it as like, it's actually pretty easy because the ego is a bunch of hot air anyway. So if you just look at the ego as a bunch of nothing, it's pretty easy for the Holy Spirit to just fill up that space.
Exactly. And the other thing is to arrive at a point where you realize that this is a movie that is playing out in your mind, and you wrote the script. So every time somebody punches a button, Donald Trump gets you revved up, Obama gets you revved up, whatever it is that is a trigger for you, you put the words in their mouth. You were the ones who created these conditions so that you could validate your ego, so you could claim that ego's identity of being separate and apart from God. So with the teacher's manual, it becomes very obvious as we, look through the introduction to it, that ultimately the way that we're unwinding this whole situation is through that process of teaching ourselves by teaching others.
Yeah, and really, it only comes down to the extent that we choose to recognize love. Like I was saying in the beginning, I'm really just choosing to see love in someone, however obscure it might be in your mind. If you'll have patience and let the Holy Spirit work with your mind, eventually you come to a place where you can see everyone as love again.
That's absolutely a fact. Well, Stephen, we've got the introduction finished, so shall we start off next week with who are God's teachers?
Yeah, I would love that.
Well, enjoy California and the dusty, windy, tumbleweed afternoon that you've got coming up. And we'll reconvene a week from today and have more discussion around this first part of the Manual for Teachers, who are God's teachers.
Excellent. I'm excited to do it. I think it's a great one to start off with.
Very good. Well, kiddo, get out there and have fun, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, you too, Chris. Bye.
Bye.